What is the true value of having a fully paid off home? We're going to get right into it. There was a 17-year-old girl I read about recently in the paper whose father stopped paying the mortgage payments on a house they all lived in. The father was an alcoholic and he could not take the pressure. So he decided to take his son. I guess he thought taking the son would be best for the son. And they moved away. And he left his daughter and the wife inside the house. Meanwhile, the daughter and wife had to wait for 6 months until the foreclosure letter came. They were stuck with no electricity, it was cold in the house, etc. Meanwhile, the 17-year-old girl was a senior in high school and she could not sustain her grades. So when the foreclosure letter came, she never had told anybody that she was in foreclosure. She ended up staying with a friend who allowed her to stay until the end of her senior year. And so when you think about the impact this has had on her in her adult life, she's dealt with depression, she's dealt with anxiety, she's dealt with substance abuse. And just imagine if she has kids, the amount of depression or anxiety her kids may have. This is the impact of when a family doesn't take care of their financial responsibilities. And in this video, we're going to discuss why is it that mortgage payments are not getting paid? Why is it that in 2023 we have over 270,000 people who went into foreclosure, which is up 9% from 2022? Now, some may argue that COVID-19 has something to do with that because a lot of people overspent and bought homes during COVID-19 because interest rates were low. But if that's the case, that means that they should be able to afford their mortgage payments then because the interest rates are low. So what's going on? The benefits of having a fully paid off home allows you to have financial flexibility when times get tough. Because at the end of the day, there will always be an unexpected expense and you will have to learn how to have some maneuvers to get out of that financial problem. Just imagine when you retire, you can live rent-free or mortgage-free. You will only have to be concerned with paying your insurance and taxes and maintenance of the house. Or if you decide to move out of that house, you can sell the house because it'll have a lot of equity in the house. Because obviously you want to buy a home in a good neighborhood where the population is increasing. But you can have your retirement income. Did you know that 1 in 10 retirees supplement their retirement income from their home that they own, what they call investment properties? You can do the same thing too. My name is Nehemiah Jeffrey and my goal is to help small businesses grow through telling stories about other entrepreneurs. We want to learn as much as we can from entrepreneurs to figure out ways to avoid making those same mistakes and also to figure out ways to benefit from the things that they've done really well. Because as my grandfather would say, you have to follow the money. And following the money, you got to follow the habits of people that have done it well. And you have to understand why they did what they did. So the goal in this video is to explain 6 powerful ways on how you can achieve having a fully paid off house to avoid foreclosure for a first-time home buyer. These powerful ways will help you to avoid having depression, anxiety, or even substance abuse, so you'll know the steps on how to prepare to have a fully paid off house. You may have to make some lifestyle adjustments, but that's the sacrifice you need to make today in order to achieve that long-term benefit. By the way, since you're here, hit the subscribe and like button to get more content just like this. So let's get right into it. Number 1, don't buy a house if the numbers are too tight. Now, what do I mean by this? If your credit score is, if you need a cosigner to buy a house because your credit score is too low, then don't buy the house. I would even argue to say that don't buy a house if your credit score is above 500. Why? Because that tells you you do not know how to handle your debt. You don't know how to pay your bills on time. You don't know how to something is off. I don't know what it is. Everybody has to assess their own credit and figure out why your credit is low. Now, there may be some exceptions, but in most cases, the goal is to be patient and wait a year or 2 years and get your credit score higher to be able to afford to buy a house. Another thing is, if you need help with the down payment on your house, then again, do not buy the house. It tells me that you don't have enough income coming in. That means that your expenses are really high. Therefore, you can't afford to buy a house. Oftentimes, yes, can you get a gift from a friend that you can use for a deposit for your house? You can definitely do that. But if you don't have $10,000 sitting in your account to use as a deposit to buy your house, it tells me that you don't know how to save. It tells me that either you need another job, or you need to work 3 jobs, or you need to figure out a way to make more money, to save more money. Okay? Because if you get into, because not only that, you need money for your deposit, but you need reserves. Right? You just can't have your deposit money ready to go, but you need reserves on top of that. So if you don't have that saved and ready to go, then it's not a good time to buy a house. Save your money up. The main thing that affects people with their credit is debt. They have high credit card debt. Okay, so you really want to get your credit card debt under control. You want to make sure that it's, at 0%, meaning that you don't have any debt, any outstanding debt you have to pay back when you buy this house. Now, that may seem extreme, but you don't want to start off buying a house in an insecure financial position. You want to be very secure when buying your house. You want to be in a strong financial position, right? Because then that will set you up to be able to pay down your house really well going down the road. But if you start off stressing and struggling to even just pay down your debt that you owe previous to buying a house, what do you think is going to happen when you buy a house? You're going to be even more stressed out. You're going to have even more anxiety. So you don't want to do that. Take a year off. Get a second job. Pay down all your debt. Understand how to utilize credit. The way to utilize credit is to use the credit card to pay all your bills, but you have the money in your bank account. The moment you pay your bills, you pay back that amount of your credit card. That will help you have a good standing with that credit card company that will ultimately report that credit card company onto the 3 credit bureaus, which can help increase your credit score. So this is how to use credit, okay? We all need credit, but just use it well. Okay, number 2, bring as much cash as you can for your deposit. Now, typically with a conventional loan, they require that you put down, I think it's like 5%, sometimes 10%, depending on your credit score. The thing is, the more cash you bring to your deposit, the less in debt you'll have to pay. Now, let's say you have, the deposit amount is $10,000. But if you bring $20,000 or $30,000 to the table for your deposit, now this is if you have the cash. Don't stress about it if you don't have the cash. But if you have the cash, consider putting more down, because down the road, that could save you 5 years of paying this mortgage off. That could save you more interest down the road, which can result in thousands of dollars being saved. So now, another thing to consider is that you need to have set aside, I would say, a year worth of emergency funds. Don't dip into your emergency funds to use that as a deposit for your house. So you calculate, they say 3 to 6 months is the proper time frame to have for your emergency fund. Fair. So you calculate 6 months of emergency funds. I would say probably set aside a year worth of emergency fund. Once you set aside that year, you have your deposit amount ready to go. Then everything that's left over, you should consider putting it down as additional money for your deposit, because it'll help you save money down the road. So consider it. I would deeply think about this, because you can pay your house down, and instead of it taking 30 years, maybe you could pay it down in 25 years. Okay, number 3, you got to keep a high credit score. Once you get your credit score high before you buy your house, you got to maintain it. Now, what's a good credit score to have? My suggestion would be to get it to a 740. It means that you have an excellent credit score. Some people don't realize the higher the credit score, the lower interest rate you'll pay. Okay, that results in thousands of dollars of money being saved. Okay, even if you can qualify for a house with a 500 credit score, your interest rate is going to be higher than average, meaning that you're going to pay more money down the road in 30 years. So keep a high, first of all, get your credit score high, maintain a high credit score, get it to a 740, then apply for a house. And that will help you significantly. Okay, moving along here. Always pay more than your mortgage amount each month. Okay, so I would suggest you take out a 30-year mortgage. Okay, do not take out a 15-year mortgage, because the payments are going to be higher per month. You want to take out a 30-year mortgage because the payments are going to be lower. Now, the interest rate is a little higher with a 30-year mortgage, versus a 15-year mortgage. But what you can do is every single month you could pay down a little bit more on your principal, not on the interest. Now, when you do this, call your bank to make sure the additional money you're paying down on your mortgage is going towards the principal. It's not going towards the interest. Okay? Also, ask if there's any penalties for paying down the mortgage, because sometimes banks charge penalties. So understand what the penalties are and understand these consequences that it can have on you. Again, always pay a little bit more on your mortgage every single month or every quarter or every year. Any bonus money you get, any extra money you get, use it to pay down your mortgage. Now, you may ask yourself, why is this important? Why should I be paying extra money on my mortgage payment for a house that I can just pay it off in 30 years? Fair enough. Now, you may not see this, but when you take out a mortgage over 30 years, let's say the house is $400,000, and let's say your mortgage is $400,000. On average, over 30 years, you're going to pay 2.5 times that amount. So instead of you paying $400,000 in debt, you're going to pay $1.2 million in cash that's going to the bank over 30 years. If you can pay down that same house in 15 years, you know how much you'll save? You're going to save $600,000. You're going to be able to pay that house and in 15 years, and the most you're going to pay is $600,000, right? So think about that. Instead of you paying $1.2 million over 30 years, you're going to pay only $600,000 in 15 years. That's $600,000 of money you get to keep in your pocket. Okay? That's more principal that has been paid down. Okay? Really, really important here. Number 4, only buy homes in growing areas. Now, what's a growing area? In this book, The Millionaire Mind, they talk about some of the characteristics of millionaires and what did they do to become a millionaire. Well, a lot of them bought homes within the price range of about $300,000 to $400,000, right? No more than $500,000. But what they did was they bought homes in areas where the population was growing. Now, 10 years later, that same house is worth $1.2 million. That's a lot of money. That's significant. All based on appreciation. So if they sell their house today, they will get $1.2 million. Mind you, they didn't pay off the mortgage. They didn't pay off probably more than half of their mortgage. So they're going to walk away with a nice check. So this is the attitude to have. Now, how do you identify homes that are in growing neighborhoods? Well, like I just said, the population has to be increasing. Also, if there's no activity, if there's not a lot of buyers and sellers in that particular neighborhood, not a good neighborhood. A good indicator to know if a neighborhood is doing well, if you have a lot of fix and flippers in the neighborhood. If you have investors that's buying and selling constantly, that's a good neighborhood to get into. Also, hire a good real estate agent. A real estate agent will tell you whether or not an area is good, whether or not it's bad, what the crime rate is, what's the makeup of that neighborhood. Another good indicator is, are businesses moving into the neighborhood? Do businesses want to do business in their neighborhood? And if the answer is yes, that's a good neighborhood. If businesses are anxious to get out their neighborhood, then that's not a good neighborhood to get into. Also, check the city development plans. What new plans are the city doing? Okay, do we have any new roads, any new libraries, any new parks or schools or what have you? Check to see if there's any new development happening from the city. That's a good indicator that the area is growing. The main indicator, though, is make sure that population is increasing. You got a lot of young people that want to live in that neighborhood. It's booming. It's bursting with love and energy and excitement. People want to be in this neighborhood. That's what you got to look for. Number 5, never be cash poor. Now, what I alluded to earlier is that you need about 3 to 6 months of reserve. Now, I would suggest that you have at least a year. But just because you're paying more on your mortgage payments every month, that don't mean use up all your cash. Okay? Keep healthy reserves and add to your reserves every single month, right? Increase your reserves. Don't just think because you have that 3 to 6 months reserve that you're solid. No, you keep increasing it slowly but surely. It's like investing your money in Vanguard or some sort of ETF fund. You slowly put money into it. You never stop putting money into that. Never be cash poor when owning a piece of real estate, because when times get tough, you can dip right into that money, pay off that mortgage, or pay a portion of that mortgage that could last you for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years while you figure out what's your next step in life. And lastly, number 6, you have to figure out how to live frugal. Living frugal will assist you in many different ways. And this is probably key. You know, it's so many different tactics and strategies you can do to live frugal, but at least eat inside the house 4 to 5 times a week. Try to reduce the amount of money you spend on coffee outside the house. You know, when you think about your subscription that you take out, sometimes they have yearly subscriptions, but you got to pay more up front, or you pay more per month. Do the yearly subscription. Think about the quality of items that you get. Pay a premium for these items, because if you don't pay a premium for your furniture, your bed, you know, equipment in the house, if it breaks down, you got to buy it twice. But if you buy a piece of equipment that can last you a lifetime, or can last you 20 years or 30 years, then you don't have to buy it twice. So you pay more up front for things that will help you not to buy it again. And also think about buying things wholesale. You know, it's all different type of websites. You can buy, you know, big thing of tissue for wholesale for cheap. You know, buy big things, buy 4 things of tissue. Keep it in the garage or keep it in the basement or whatever. Buy big things of soap. Store it. Buy big things of toothpaste. Store it. Because you're going to save a lot more money down the road. And all these little dollars add up. Okay? So live frugal. It's really important, because that extra money you got, you can use that for that deposit on your mortgage. You can use that to help increase your savings for your emergency fund, right? And the main thing here, as I conclude this, is that this will help you to alleviate that depression, that anxiety, that substance abuse, and you can live a nice life. You can live really well. You know, your kids going to be healthy. They're going to be stress-free. Your grandkids going to be healthy. They're going to be stress-free, right? You can even pass that house down to your family. You know, so while you're here, check out my other video right here where we discuss other strategies on real estate. Until the next time, adios.